If you're listening to this, you probably already know what to do. You're not ignorant. You're not confused. You've read. You've planned. You've promised yourself again and again, and still nothing sticks. That's not because you're lazy. It's because something broke quietly. You stopped trusting your own words. This book is not here to motivate you. It will not make you feel inspired. It will not tell you to believe in yourself, if that's what you're looking for. Stop now. This book is for people who are tired of hearing themselves talk, tired of tomorrow, tired of knowing better and doing nothing. The real problem is not discipline, not willpower, not motivation. The problem is a system that lets you negotiate with yourself, a system that makes delay feel reasonable, a system that trains you to back down, one small promise at a time. This book does not ask you to change your life. It asks you to stop betraying yourself. You will not learn how to work harder. You will learn how to act before your brain interferes. You will build a reflex small enough to bypass excuses. You will learn how to stand back up without drama when you fall. This book is designed for when you're tired, when your brain is full, when you don't want to think. Each chapter does one thing, no more, no hiding place. You don't need to trust this book. You just need to do what it tells you to do. If you act, you'll have proof. If you don't, at least you'll stop lying to yourself about why. This book is not meant to stay with you. It's meant to disappear. We begin with one uncomfortable truth. No one is coming to save you, and that is exactly where your control begins. Chapter 1. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to save you. There is no moment in the future where everything suddenly becomes easier. There is no perfect timing waiting for you to arrive. There is no signal, no notification, no knock on the door telling you that now is the right time. Life does not announce itself. It does not warn you. It does not check whether you are ready. It moves quietly. And while it moves, many people stay still, waiting for a different feeling, a different mood, a different version of themselves to show up first. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel less tired. They wait for circumstances to improve. They wait for help, clarity, or permission. But nothing arrives, not because they are unworthy, and not because they failed some invisible test. Nothing arrives because that is not how life works. Life does not prepare you. It responds to movement, and if you do not move, it simply passes you by. Most people do not lose because they are incapable. They lose because they wait. They wait for a feeling that never stays. They wait for energy that never comes on demand. They wait for certainty in a system that offers none. They wait for a future version of themselves to do what the present version refuses to do. But that future version is never born without action first. There is no confidence before action. There is no clarity before movement. There is no discipline before showing up. Everything people hope to feel later is produced only after they act, and when action never comes. Neither does the version they are waiting for. Every time you say later, something important happens. You do not just delay a task, you delay yourself. You do not lose a day, you lose a piece of self-respect. The first time, it is easy to dismiss. You tell yourself it was reasonable. The second time, doubt appears. The third time, disappointment becomes familiar. Over time, a pattern forms. You know what you should do. You hesitate. You regret it. You criticize yourself. You wait for motivation. And then the cycle repeats. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just a slow erosion of trust, day by day. You train yourself to be someone who does not follow through. Doing nothing is not neutral. It is not rest. It is not recovery. It is training. When you choose not to act, you are teaching your brain a lesson. You are teaching it that delay is acceptable. You are teaching it that comfort wins. You are teaching it that intentions do not require execution. And the brain learns quickly. It learns that a reasonable excuse is enough to stop you. I am tired. It can wait. It is not urgent. These explanations feel harmless. They feel human. But repeated often enough, they shape behavior, not into laziness, but into weakness, not suddenly, but gradually. There is a critical distinction to make here. This is not about blame. This is not about attacking yourself. This is about accuracy. The problem is not your circumstances. It is not your past. It is not other people. Those things may be difficult, but they are not the deciding factor. There is only one variable that truly matters: action or no action. Life does not negotiate with reasons. It responds to behavior. You can explain endlessly why something is hard. You can understand deeply why you feel stuck. But if you do not move, nothing changes. This is not a moral judgment. It is simply how cause and effect works. As long as you believe that something outside of you is holding the power, you remain a victim. When you accept that the only control you have is over movement, you take the wheel back, not dramatically, not emotionally, calmly, quietly, like stating an obvious fact. You do not need enthusiasm for this. You do not need inspiration. You only need to stop waiting. Many people scare themselves with unrealistic expectations. They believe change must be big. They believe commitment must be intense. They believe effort must be perfect. These beliefs sound ambitious, but they are excuses in disguise, because when the standard is too high, paralysis feels justified and paralysis feels safe. The truth is simpler. Starting is not the same as doing the work. Starting is only a shift, a small one, an imperfect one. It does not need to be correct. It does not need to be complete. It only needs to break stillness. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need confidence. You do not need belief in yourself. Belief is built after action, not before it. Trust grows when you do what you said you would do, even in the smallest form. But if you remain seated, waiting for the right internal state, you will wait indefinitely. Feelings are unreliable. Life does not reward waiting. It responds to those who step forward, even without certainty. At this point, there are only two paths. One is familiar. You continue waiting. You continue thinking. You continue understanding. You continue regretting. Nothing new happens. Only another loop forms. The other path is quieter. You step without knowing exactly where it leads. You do not receive guarantees. You do not receive comfort. You receive movement, and movement changes everything. Not because life becomes kinder, but because you stop asking it to be. Right now, the task is not ambitious. It is not strategic. It has nothing to do with your long-term goals. Stand up, move your body, change position, take a small physical action immediately. Not to be productive, not to be efficient, only to break the state of waiting. That is enough. This chapter does not teach you how to win. It removes the illusion that someone else will. It takes away the permission to sit still and hope, and it places control back where it belongs, in your hands. When you move on from this chapter, the question is no longer when you will start. The question becomes why you keep negotiating instead. And once that question replaces the old one, there is no going back. Chapter 2. The Negotiator in Your Head. There is a voice inside your head that sounds very familiar. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It does not insult you. It speaks calmly, reasonably, almost kindly. Later is fine. You are tired today. Tomorrow will be better. Right now is not the right moment. Nothing about this voice feels dangerous. Nothing about it feels wrong. In fact, it sounds intelligent. It sounds considerate. It sounds like common sense. When you listen to it, you do not feel weak. You feel reasonable. You feel like someone who understands themselves. And that is exactly why this voice is so powerful. It does not push you away from action with force. It pulls you away with logic. It shows up at the exact moment you are about to begin something slightly uncomfortable, slightly uncertain, slightly demanding. And it gives you an exit that feels justified. You recognize this voice because you hear it every day. You hear it when you plan. You hear it when you hesitate. You hear it when you promise yourself you will start soon. And because it sounds so much like you, you rarely question it. You assume it is you, but it is not. It is a mechanism. It is important to say this clearly and without judgment. That voice does not exist because you are lazy. It does not exist because you lack willpower. It exists because your brain was built to keep you safe, not to help you grow. The human brain has one primary job: survival. And survival means avoiding pain, avoiding fatigue, and conserving energy whenever possible. When you face a difficult task, the brain does not ask whether the task is meaningful or aligned with your future. It asks only one question: is this safe right now? If the answer involves discomfort, effort, or uncertainty, the brain activates resistance, not through panic, but through negotiation. It offers alternatives that reduce immediate cost. It offers delay. It offers excuses that feel compassionate. This is not sabotage. This is biology doing its job. The negotiator is not evil. It is efficient. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The real problem begins when you obey it. Every time you follow that voice, something subtle happens. Your brain learns. It learns that postponing action is acceptable. It learns that delay works. It learns that the fastest way to reduce discomfort is to stop. This learning does not require big failures. It does not require quitting entirely. It only needs small approvals. 5 minutes later, one exception, just today. The brain does not care about scale. It only cares about outcome, and the outcome is always the same. You did not act. Over time. This trains your system, not into collapse, but into hesitation, not into disaster, but into weakness, very slowly, very quietly. Negotiation does not destroy your life in one moment. It stretches it thin. It turns starting into a debate. It turns intention into delay. And before you realize it, standing still becomes your default state. Another trap makes this even worse. You start to believe that because a reason sounds logical, it must be true. The negotiator never offers ridiculous excuses. It offers human ones: tiredness, stress, timing, mood, responsibility. These reasons make sense, but sense is not the same as truth. The brain does not need a correct reason to stop you. It only needs a reason that is not challenged. And most of the time, you do not challenge it, because challenging means moving. Challenging means effort. Challenging means discomfort, so the negotiator wins by default. And here is the question that cuts through all of it. If those reasons were truly valid, why has nothing changed? If later was a good plan, why does later keep disappearing? If tomorrow was reasonable, why does tomorrow look exactly like today? Reasons can sound kind. Results are never confused. And the results tell a very simple story. This is where most people mislabel the enemy. They call themselves lazy. But laziness is a lack of desire. Laziness is indifference. Laziness is not caring. And that is not what is happening here. You care a lot. You think a lot. You regret a lot. You replay conversations with yourself. You imagine better versions of your future. You are not inactive because you do not want to move. You are inactive because you stay in your head too long. The problem is not a lack of ambition. The problem is prolonged negotiation. Procrastination is not laziness. Procrastination is extended dialogue. It is letting the negotiator keep the floor until action disappears. And the longer the conversation goes on, the less likely movement becomes. This chapter is not about fixing that yet. It is not about discipline. It is not about strategy. It is not about forcing yourself to act. It does not ask you to win an argument with your mind, because you cannot win that argument. The negotiator is better at logic than you are. It has access to your emotions, your history, and your fatigue. Trying to convince yourself is just another conversation, and conversation is exactly where you lose. The only goal of this chapter is awareness, to separate yourself from the voice, to see it as a function, not an identity, to understand that when it appears. This is not a moment for thinking. It is simply a signal. From now on, when that voice shows up, you do not need to fight it. You do not need to silence it. You do not need to replace it with positive thoughts. You only need to recognize it. When you hear later, not now. You deserve a break. You label it internally. That is the negotiator. Nothing more. Nothing less. No ambition. No judgment. Just recognition. This step may seem small, but it is critical, because the moment you can see the negotiator, it loses its disguise. It is no longer you. It is no longer truth. It is just a mechanism trying to reduce discomfort. Do not try to change your behavior yet. Do not demand action yet. That comes later. For now, the task is simpler. Notice the voice. Name it. Create distance. That distance is where control begins. This chapter does not make you stronger. It makes you clearer, and clarity is the prerequisite for every change that follows. Chapter 1. Put your hands back on the wheel. This chapter shows you what has been pulling it away. Once you can see that clearly, you are finally ready to stop arguing and start moving. Chapter 3. Motivation is a traitor. Motivation makes a very convincing promise. It shows up when you feel inspired, when you are excited, when you are imagining a better version of your life. In those moments, everything feels clear. You make plans. You set goals. You tell yourself that tomorrow will be different, that this time you really mean it, that this time you will show up. It feels real in that moment. It feels honest. And then the next morning comes. You wake up. The excitement is gone. The clarity is gone. The desire to act is gone. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing went wrong. You just do not feel it anymore. And it is tempting to think that the problem is you, that you are lazy, that you lack discipline. But that is not what happened. What happened is simple. Motivation left. Because motivation only shows up when things feel easy. Motivation loves comfort. It loves imagination. It loves moments where no effort is required yet, but the moment real effort appears, motivation disappears. That is its pattern, and it has always been that way. Motivation never shows up when you actually need it. It does not appear when you open your laptop to start real work. It does not appear when you stand up to exercise after a long day. It does not appear when you have to do something uncomfortable, boring, or uncertain. Motivation only shows up after something has already been done, after progress has already been made, after the brain feels safe again. That is when motivation suddenly appears and takes credit. This is why waiting for motivation is such a trap. It is like waiting for a reward before doing the work. You are asking for proof before action. And life does not work that way. Action comes first, motivation comes last, always. There is something important you need to understand. And it is not flattering, but it is freeing. Your brain does not care about your goals. It does not care about your dreams. It does not care about the future you imagine. The brain has one priority: survival. And survival means conserving energy, avoiding pain, avoiding effort when you face something difficult. The brain does not evaluate whether it is meaningful or important. It evaluates whether it feels safe and easy. If it does not, it sends signals: tiredness, boredom, resistance, doubt. These signals feel very real, but they are not truth. They are warnings. They exist to stop you from spending energy. Your brain was never designed to help you succeed. It was designed to keep you alive. That is why trusting your feelings when it comes to action is a mistake. This is where most people get stuck in a downward loop. They wait for motivation. Motivation does not come. They do nothing. Then they feel disappointed in themselves. They start blaming themselves. That self-blame drains even more energy. With less energy, motivation becomes even weaker, and the loop repeats. Each cycle makes starting feel heavier. Each cycle erodes self-trust, and eventually, people begin to believe that they are broken, that something is wrong with them. But the truth is simpler. Motivation does not help you start. Motivation is consumed because you do not start. It is not fuel. It is a byproduct. And when you rely on it, you starve yourself of action. Here is a truth that most people avoid because it sounds harsh. Your feelings do not deserve control. Feelings change constantly. You can wake up motivated and feel empty by noon. You can feel excited one day and indifferent the next. If your actions depend on how you feel, your life will always be unstable. People with discipline are not people who feel good more often. They are people who have stopped listening to feelings when it is time to move. They do not fight their emotions. They do not suppress them. They simply do not obey them. Feelings are allowed to exist. They are not allowed to command. That distinction changes everything. You do not need to love what you are about to do. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need confidence. You do not need motivation. Waiting for any of those things is another form of delay. Another way the mind protects comfort. The only order that works is simple. Move first. Think later. Action before emotion. Always, the moment you move. The brain recalculates. The threat feels smaller. The resistance weakens. Motivation may appear later, but it is irrelevant by then. The work has already started. From this point on, there is one rule that matters. If you wait for a feeling, you will never begin. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week. Because feelings are unreliable, they arrive late and leave early. Action does not need permission. Action only needs movement. And that movement can happen even when motivation is absent. When you finish listening to this, do not ask yourself whether you feel like doing something. Do not check your mood. Do not evaluate your energy. Just stand up. Move your body. Take one step, any step. Not to be productive, not to be efficient, just to experience one thing clearly. Action can happen without motivation, and once you experience that directly, the lie loses its power. Motivation stops being something you wait for and becomes something that follows. Chapter 4. The 5-second window, beating the brain with speed. The real moment where action is decided is not an hour, not a morning, not a day. It is a brief flash. A thought appears and disappears almost instantly. I should do this. That is the moment. Not when you plan, not when you prepare, not when you feel ready. The outcome is decided right there. In those first few seconds, the thought shows up. The body stays still. And if nothing happens immediately, the brain takes over. It starts scanning. It compares options. It looks for comfort. It negotiates. And once that process begins, the chance is gone. The failure does not happen because the task is hard. It happens because the start was delayed. The battle is not about endurance. It is about timing. It is not fought over hours. It is fought over seconds. There is a narrow window between intention and hesitation, and it is smaller than most people realize. The brain is fast, but it is not instant. It needs a moment to assemble reasons, to weigh costs, to generate resistance. That moment is your opening. It is brief, but it exists. If you wait, the brain wins. If you move, the brain has nothing to say yet. Speed decides who takes control. This is why waiting for certainty is fatal. This is why thinking feels productive but produces nothing. The only advantage you have is that movement can happen before reasoning finishes. That advantage is enough. The tool is simple because complexity would fail. When the intention appears, do not ask questions. Do not evaluate. Do not analyze. Interrupt. Count backward. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And move your body. Stand up. Shift position. Reach for the object. Take the first physical step. That is all. This is not a technique to master. It is not a philosophy. It is not a mindset. It is an interruption, a cut in the stream of thought. The counting is not magical. It is mechanical. It occupies the channel that the brain uses to build excuses. It buys you a few seconds of silence. And in that silence, movement happens. There is no need to believe in it. There is no need to understand it deeply. It works because the brain is excellent at arguing, but slower than physical motion. Once the body moves, the brain must follow. It recalculates. It adapts. It looks for a new explanation. But by then, the start has already happened. You cannot convince the brain to cooperate. You can only outrun it. This is the shift that redefines discipline. Willpower is fragile. It drains quickly. It depends on energy, mood, and context. Reflex does not. Reflex does not require motivation. It does not require desire. It does not require agreement. The goal is no longer to want to act. The goal is to move before resistance forms, not to be strong, to be fast. This is why this chapter matters more than all the explanations before it. This is the first time action actually occurs, not later, now. While you are listening, not after the chapter ends, not after you feel ready, right now, as the words continue. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not finish the sentence in your head. Count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Stand up. Change where you are. Open the laptop. Pick up the pen. Put on the shoes. The action doesn't need to be meaningful. It does not need to be productive. It only needs to happen. The movement itself is the installation. This is how reflex is built, not through repetition of ideas, but through repetition of starts. Starting is not working. Starting is a transition from stillness to motion, from waiting to doing. You are not required to perform. You are not required to do it well. You are not required to continue. You are only required to begin. That single shift collapses the pressure that keeps people frozen. You do not need to do the work. You only need to start it. Speed is freedom because speed removes negotiation. Speed removes debate. Speed removes the illusion that you need permission from your feelings. You do not need perfect timing. You need to be slightly faster than your brain. That small advantage gives you control. And control is not something you feel. It is something you demonstrate right now. Apply the sequence once more. Intention appears. 4, 3, 2, 1. Move. Do not judge it. Do not comment on it. Do not criticize yourself. Let the action be small and unimportant. What matters is the memory. This is the first brick of self-trust. Proof that action can happen before thought interferes. Proof that you do not need motivation to move. From this point on, the system is installed. Everything that follows in this book is only about repeating, protecting, and locking this mechanism. If this chapter works, the book stops being advice. It becomes a switch. Chapter 5, Why You No Longer Trust Yourself. There is a quiet symptom that most people never name. Even though they live with it every day, it is not sadness. It is not fear. It is not a lack of ambition. It is the feeling that your own words carry no weight. You make plans, but you do not take them seriously. You promise yourself things, but you do not feel pressure to keep them. You hear yourself say, "I will do it tomorrow." And nothing tightens inside. No urgency, no consequence, just a dull neutrality. This is not emotional pain. It is numbness, a kind of internal indifference toward your own commitments. And that numbness is not random. It is a signal that something fundamental has been damaged. Every time a promise is made and not kept, something is lost. Not time, not opportunity, not productivity. What is lost is internal credibility. Each unkept promise teaches the brain a lesson: this voice is unreliable. This decision does not need to be respected. The brain is not sentimental. It records outcomes. not intentions. When words repeatedly fail to turn into action, the brain updates its model. It stops taking your declarations seriously. This happens quietly. There is no alarm, no dramatic collapse, just a gradual downgrade. And the most important part is this: no one else has to judge you for this to happen. The damage occurs internally. You are the one lowering your own value by treating your commitments as optional. This is why casual promises are not harmless. Saying "I will start tomorrow" and doing nothing is not neutral. It is a withdrawal from your internal account. Over time, those withdrawals add up. The brain begins to expect failure. It prepares for disappointment, and because it expects disappointment, it reduces effort. Why invest energy in a system that does not pay out? This is how trust erodes, not through catastrophe, but through repetition, small, forgettable repetitions that feel insignificant in the moment and become decisive over time. Many people believe the solution is stronger determination, bigger promises, more intense resolve. They think change requires a dramatic decision, a line in the sand, a new version of themselves. But this belief backfires. Big determination leads to big promises. Big promises increase the chance of failure. Failure further damages trust, and the cycle accelerates. Each attempt to fix the problem with intensity makes the problem worse. This is not because you lack willpower. It is because you are placing yourself in a position where loss is likely. You are setting standards that your current system cannot meet, then punishing yourself when it fails. This is not motivation. It is sabotage. The brain learns quickly, and it learns from behavior, not words. It does not care how sincere your intentions are. It cares what actually happens. When broken promises repeat, the brain learns a rule speaking does not require doing. Over time, the emotional response disappears. You no longer feel tension when you break a promise. You no longer feel embarrassment. You no longer feel urgency. This is not growth. This is conditioning in the wrong direction. It is training yourself to tolerate inconsistency, and it happens every day, whether you notice it or not. Here is the hard truth, stated calmly and without accusation. No one lowered your value before you did. No one taught you not to trust yourself. That lesson was learned through experience, through saying one thing and doing another, through ignoring your own decisions, through treating your own standards as flexible. The result is predictable. When trust is gone, decisions become weak. When decisions are weak, action hesitates. And when action hesitates, the system collapses under its own doubt. This is not a character flaw. It is a mechanical outcome. There is good news, but it requires precision. Self-trust is not a feeling. It is not confidence. It is not self-esteem. It is the result of behavior repeated enough times to become believable. Trust is built the same way it is destroyed, through consistency. And consistency does not start with big promises. It starts with promises so small they cannot fail. This is not lowering standards. It is restoring credibility. The goal is not to impress yourself. The goal is to re-establish reliability. This is where most people misunderstand the repair process. They try to rebuild trust by committing to outcomes. Results, major changes. But trust is not restored by results. It is restored by follow-through, by doing exactly what you said you would do, even when what you said was minimal. Especially when it was minimal. Each kept promise, no matter how small, deposits credibility back into the system. over time. Those deposits compound. The brain updates its model again. This voice delivers. This decision that matters. This system is reliable. That is how strength returns. Quietly, gradually, without drama. This chapter is not meant to make you feel better. It is meant to make you accurate. You do not need to become stronger. You need to become trustworthy again. Not to others, to yourself. That process does not begin with ambition. It begins with honesty, with choosing actions that can be completed immediately, with refusing to promise what cannot be delivered, with respecting the smallest commitments enough to keep them. Before moving on, take one step. Choose one action that takes less than a minute, something that can be done immediately, something that cannot fail. Do it now, not to be productive, not to improve your life, only to create one clean data point, one moment where your words match your behavior, one moment where you say and do. That moment matters more than any plan. It is the first brick. And from that brick, trust can be rebuilt. Chapter 6. Cheap Wins and the Trust Bank. There is a kind of damage that does not show on the surface. No one around you can see it. No one points it out. No one confronts you about it, but you feel it every day. It shows up when you speak and your own words sound weak. When you make plans and feel no pressure to respect them. When you promise yourself something and already know, quietly, that it probably will not happen. The feeling that follows is not dramatic. It is not panic or sadness. It is a dull mix of regret, self-contempt, and avoidance. You avoid thinking too long about your own decisions because they remind you of a pattern you do not like. This is not a crisis. It is worse than that. It is erosion, and erosion happens slowly enough that people mistake it for personality. This is the deepest crack in the system. Not a lack of discipline, not a lack of motivation, but a loss of trust in your own word. When you no longer believe what you say to yourself. Everything downstream weakens. Plans lose authority. Decisions lose weight. Intentions become suggestions, and action starts to wobble. Nothing collapses all at once. It just stops holding. This is why so many people feel strangely tired before they even begin. They are not exhausted from effort. They are exhausted from inconsistency. Understanding how this trust is broken matters because it removes confusion and self-blame. The break does not happen because of one big failure. It does not require a dramatic collapse. It happens through a simple contract that gets violated again and again. You say, "Tomorrow I will do it." Tomorrow arrives, and you do not. You say, "Next week I will start." Next week passes, and nothing changes. Each time this happens, the brain takes a note. It does not argue. It does not scold. It records. Word equals noise. Promise equals optional. Decision equals flexible. This learning does not require large stakes. It only requires repetition. Over time, the pattern hardens. You stop feeling tension when you break your word. You stop feeling embarrassed. You stop feeling urgency, not because you have matured, but because the system has adapted downward. This is the truth that matters most. You did not lose trust because you failed. You lost trust because you talked more than you acted. Failure, when paired with follow-through, can strengthen trust. Empty declarations destroy it. The brain does not punish failure. It punishes inconsistency. And once inconsistency becomes normal, motivation cannot fix it. Inspiration cannot fix it. Determination cannot fix it. Because trust is not a feeling problem. It is an evidence problem. This is why motivation is useless here. Motivation creates sensation, a rush, a sense of readiness, but trust requires proof. And the brain does not accept future promises as proof when the past is full of broken ones. You cannot think your way back into believing yourself. You cannot convince yourself with better arguments. The brain is not persuaded by speeches. It is persuaded by records. History matters, and right now. The history says one thing clearly: words alone do not mean action. This is where the idea of the trust bank changes everything. Imagine that your self-trust works like an account. Every person has one. It is always active, whether they are aware of it or not. Every time you say you will do something and you do it, you make a deposit. Every time you say you will do something and you do not, you make a withdrawal. The size of the action does not matter nearly as much as the accuracy of the transaction. A small promise kept is a clean deposit. A big promise broken is a large withdrawal. There are no shortcuts. There are no bonuses for ambition. There is no forgiveness for enthusiasm. Only transactions. Most people try to rebuild trust by looking for a big deposit, a dramatic change, a powerful streak, a visible transformation. But the trust bank does not work that way. There are no large deposits available to someone who is overdrawn. The system rejects them. What works are many small, boring, almost ridiculous deposits. Ones so small that failure is nearly impossible. Ones that feel unimpressive to the ego. That is why they work, because they are honest. This is where the idea of cheap wins becomes critical. A cheap win is not about results. It is about reliability. It is a commitment designed to be kept, not admired. Most people fail here because they overestimate what is required to rebuild credibility. They think trust comes from effort or difficulty. It does not. Trust comes from alignment between words and behavior. The cheapest win is the one that restores that alignment fastest. This requires a shift in how commitments are made. The common mistake is to promise outcomes. I will work out. I will write a chapter. I will change my habits. These promises are fragile because they depend on energy, mood, time, and resistance. A cheap win avoids all of that. It commits only to the first physical movement. Not go to the gym, but put on training clothes. Not write for an hour, but open the laptop. Not fix the problem, but stand up and move to the desk. These commitments sound trivial. That is their strength. They are difficult to fail. And because they are difficult to fail, they are easy to keep. This is where many people get confused. They think small commitments mean small ambition. They do not. They mean high integrity. The goal is not to achieve more. The goal is to stop lying to yourself. When you keep a small promise, something subtle changes. The brain updates its record. This word was followed by action. This decision mattered. One deposit does not change much, but it changes something, and repeated deposits change everything. This is why keeping your word matters more than the outcome. Outcomes are slow, uncertain, often outside your control. Keeping your word is immediate, binary, fully under your control. Every time you keep a promise, no matter how small, you repair your self-image. You move from someone who talks to someone who does. That identity shift does not come from success. It comes from consistency. A trustworthy person is not someone who accomplishes big things. It is someone whose words match their actions. even when the action is small, especially when the action is small. This is the part most people miss. They chase impressive results while their credibility is still broken. That cannot work. Results do not restore trust. Follow-through does. This chapter is not asking you to compensate for the past. You do not need to make up for lost time. You do not need to rebuild your life. You do not need to prove anything. All of that thinking belongs to the old system. The new system is quieter, simpler. One promise, one action, one deposit, right now. Choose a single action that takes less than a minute, something that can be done immediately, something that cannot realistically fail. Say it to yourself clearly. I will do this, and then do it. Do not add anything. Do not upgrade it. Do not stack another promise on top. Stop after it is done. The point is not productivity. The point is the transaction. This is your first deposit. 1 unit of trust returned to the account from today forward. The goal is not to become disciplined. The goal is to become reliable again. Discipline is an outcome of trust, not the cause. Trust grows when you respect your own words enough to keep them small and keep them true. That is how the system is rebuilt, quietly, cheaply. One clean win at a time. Chapter 7. Using traps instead of willpower. For a long time, you were taught to believe that the problem was you, that you were not strong enough, not disciplined enough, not determined enough. Every failure was framed as a personal weakness. If you could just push harder, resist more, try again with more intensity, things would finally change. But this belief hides a simple truth. Willpower is a weak resource. It is unstable. It drains quickly. It collapses under stress, fatigue, and repetition. Using willpower to fight procrastination is like trying to power a heavy machine with a dying battery. It may work for a moment, then it fails, not because the machine is broken, but because the power source was never meant to carry that load. Repeated failure does not prove that you are weak. It proves that you have been using the wrong tool. Negotiation does not appear out of nowhere. It appears under specific conditions. The brain only negotiates when there are options, when there is a way out, when there are multiple paths available. The more choices you leave open, the more reasons the brain can generate, and the more reasons it generates, the more frozen you become. This is not a flaw in character. It is a design problem. When the environment offers escape routes, the brain takes them every time. So the issue is not that you lack strength. It is that you keep giving your brain too many exits. You leave the door open, then blame yourself for walking through it. This is where discipline needs to be redefined. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to endure. It is not about grinding through resistance. It is not about winning an internal battle every day. That version of discipline is exhausting and unreliable. Real discipline looks very different. It happens before the moment of action. It is quiet. It is preventative. Discipline is designing your situation in advance so that when you are tired, distracted, or unmotivated, you do not have to decide. The disciplined person is not fighting a war each morning. They cleared the battlefield the night before. They removed obstacles. They closed doors. They made decisions when their mind was clear. So that later, effort would not be required. This leads to a simple but powerful principle. When there is only one viable action left, The brain has nothing to negotiate. It cannot debate what does not exist. You do not need to force yourself to do the right thing. You need to make the wrong thing harder. When the environment limits options, behavior follows naturally. This is why asking, "How can I be more disciplined?" rarely works. It keeps the focus on internal struggle. The better question is, Daul, how can I remove every other option? When there is no alternative, action happens without drama. This is the core of the no-choice system. It is not about motivation. It is not about desire. It is about architecture. You stop thinking like a warrior and start thinking like a designer. Design does not need to be clever or complex. It only needs to be deliberate. Put the right thing in the right place. Remove the triggers that invite negotiation. Reduce friction for the action you want. Increase friction for the action you want to avoid. This design must be done while you are calm and clear. Never when you are tired. Never in the middle of a craving or a slump. You design when you are rational, so that later. You do not have to be. What happens when there are no choices left is predictable. You do not need motivation. You do not need determination. You do not need to convince yourself of anything. Action occurs almost automatically, without emotion, without resistance. From the outside, this looks like discipline. From the inside, it feels like simplicity, fewer decisions, less noise, less debate. People who seem highly disciplined are not stronger than others. They are just living in environments that require less strength. This is why trying harder is not the solution. Adding more effort to a poorly designed system only increases frustration. Rearranging the system removes the need for effort. Setting traps is not weakness. It is intelligence. The strongest people are not those who can push through anything. They are the ones who do not need to push most days. They made strength unnecessary by removing temptation in advance. This chapter is not asking you to become someone new. It is asking you to stop relying on force and start relying on structure. Stop asking whether you are strong enough. Start asking whether you have closed all escape routes. Right now, choose one task you regularly avoid. Make one small physical change to the environment. Move an object. Remove a distraction. Prepare what you need for the next action. Do it immediately. Not for productivity, not for results, but to experience something important. When the environment changes, behavior changes without effort. That experience matters. It proves that you do not need more willpower. You need fewer choices. Chapter 8. Lazy or exhausted? There is one question that quietly destroys more systems than failure ever does. It sounds responsible. It sounds mature. It sounds like self-care. Maybe I should rest today, or worse. I think I'm burned out. This question feels safe because it carries no shame. It offers permission without conflict, and the brain loves it for exactly that reason. The problem is not that rest is bad. The problem is that this question is asked without precision. Not all tiredness is the same. Not all resistance means exhaustion. But most people never learn to tell the difference. They collapse everything into one vague word, tired. And when that happens, the system breaks from the inside. This confusion is dangerous because it creates two opposite failures at the same time. People who are avoiding action learn to hide behind the language of rest. People who are genuinely exhausted learn to push themselves past the point of recovery. One group escapes responsibility, the other damages themselves. Both believe they are doing the right thing. Both slowly dismantle the system they worked to build. There is a specific kind of tiredness that shows up before anything has even begun. You wake up already drained. You think about the task and feel heavy. You have not moved. You have not tried. Yet the idea alone feels exhausting. This is familiar. It feels real. But it is not exhaustion. It is negotiation. The brain is running simulations. It is predicting effort, discomfort, and uncertainty, and it responds by creating a sensation that pushes you away before action starts. This is not a lack of energy. It is an avoidance signal. The body is capable. The system is intact. The resistance exists to delay movement. This is procrastination wearing the mask of fatigue. That is why this kind of tiredness disappears the moment action begins, or the moment the decision is removed. It does not survive contact with movement. It survives only in anticipation. That is the key difference. If the fatigue shows up before the first step, it is not fatigue. It is hesitation disguised as self-protection. Calling it exhaustion gives it legitimacy. And once it feels legitimate, it wins. Real exhaustion feels different. It comes after sustained effort. Not one hard day, but many. It shows up when the mind feels slow, not resistant, when reactions are delayed, when even simple decisions feel heavy. The body does not bounce back after sleep. Rest does not restore clarity. And most importantly, the loss of desire is not selective. You do not just avoid difficult tasks, you avoid everything. Things you normally enjoy lose their pull. There is no inner argument, no negotiation, just emptiness. This is not avoidance. This is depletion. This matters because the response must be completely different. Treating negotiation as exhaustion trains laziness. Treating exhaustion as laziness causes damage. The brain knows this distinction, but it benefits from blurring it. Words like burnout and fatigue sound responsible. They remove guilt. They protect self-image. So the brain reaches for them whenever it wants relief, not because they are accurate, but because they are useful. This confusion is not accidental. It is a strategy to preserve comfort. The cost of this confusion is high. When avoidance is labeled as exhaustion, rest becomes escape. No structure, no boundary, no return point. Days blur, momentum dies, and trust erodes quietly. On the other side, when exhaustion is labeled as weakness, rest is denied, recovery never happens, performance drops, irritability rises, and eventually, the system collapses anyway. Both paths lead to the same place, breakdown, just by different routes. This is why a fast, brutal test is necessary, not analysis, not journaling, not debate. A single question. If this task took only 2 minutes, would I do it right now? Do not explain the answer. Do not justify it. Just notice it. If the answer is still no, even when the task is trivial, even when the cost is low, that is not exhaustion. That is negotiation. The brain is refusing movement itself. If the answer is honestly no, because even 2 minutes feels impossible, that is exhaustion. The system is depleted. The distinction is clear when you stop arguing. Once the state is identified, the response must be immediate and correct. If it is negotiation, there is no rest, no reflection, no waiting. You apply what you already learned. Movement before thought. Interrupt the delay. Begin. Rest will only strengthen avoidance here. Action breaks it. If it is real exhaustion, the opposite is required. You stop, but not loosely, not emotionally. Rest becomes structured, timed, purposeful. You rest to return to the system, not to disappear from it. You decide when rest ends before it begins. This is the hardest part for many people, accepting that rest can be disciplined, that stopping can be intentional. Rest is not lying down indefinitely. It is maintenance. It has a function. It has a boundary. Without that boundary, rest turns into drift, and drift destroys systems faster than effort ever could. The system you are building does not require perfection. It requires honesty, brutal honesty about your state. Confusing avoidance with exhaustion is a form of self-deception. Confusing exhaustion with weakness is a form of self-harm. Both come from the same place, a refusal to observe reality clearly. The system fails not because you are lazy and not because you are weak, but because you protect the wrong thing at the wrong time. Right now, apply the test. Ask the question. If this took 2 minutes, would I do it? Do not think. Do not explain. Answer it. Then act accordingly. If the answer reveals negotiation, move immediately. If it reveals exhaustion, rest properly, with a limit, with a return planned. This is not about completing the task, it is about training discrimination. Learning to read your own state accurately. Weak people destroy systems by forcing themselves endlessly. Lazy people destroy systems by resting endlessly. Clear people do neither. They respond correctly. That clarity is what keeps systems alive over time. And once you can tell the difference, you stop breaking your own progress in the name of comfort or pride. You protect the system by doing the right thing at the right moment. Chapter 9. Stop negotiating. Start commanding. There is a habit so quiet that most people never notice it. Even though it shapes their entire day, it is the habit of asking permission, not from others, but from themselves. Should I do this now? Maybe I'll wait a bit. Is this the right moment? These questions sound reasonable, polite, even. They feel like careful thinking, but they are not. They are a subtle way of lowering your own authority. Every time you ask instead of decide, you position yourself as someone who needs approval, and the moment you do that, the answer is no longer in your control. This is not about manners or thoughtfulness. This is about power. Each time you ask for permission, you teach your brain a lesson. You are not the one in charge. You are a participant in a discussion, not the decision maker. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. You stop noticing it, but the effect compounds. Decisions slow down. Action weakens, and your internal position drops from commander to negotiator. Inside your head, there are always two roles present. One gives orders, the other looks for reasons. The problem is not that the reason finder exists. It is useful. It protects you from danger. It optimizes comfort. The problem is that it has been running the show for years. Whenever something uncomfortable appears, the reason finder steps forward. It explains, it delays, it justifies, and because there has been no clear authority to override it, it wins by default. This is not a moral failure. It is a structural one. There has simply never been a real commander installed. Negotiation feels safe because it feels familiar. Dialogue feels intelligent, but dialogue opens doors. The moment you ask a question, you invite debate, You create space for hesitation. Commands do the opposite. A command closes the door. It does not argue. It does not explain. It does not ask for agreement. It moves straight to execution. This is the shift that changes everything. You do not need to convince yourself. You need to command yourself. A command is short, clear, physical. Stand up, open the laptop, move to the desk, nothing more. No reasons, no future thinking, no emotional check-in. The command is followed immediately by action. That sequence matters. The shorter the gap, the stronger the effect. You are not trying to feel ready. You are not trying to feel confident. You are installing a hierarchy. Action follows orders. End of discussion. Many people resist this idea because they fear making the wrong decision. They believe that slowing down protects them, that thinking longer leads to better outcomes. This is an illusion. Slow decisions feel controlled, but they paralyze. Fast decisions feel risky, but they create momentum, and momentum solves more problems than perfect planning ever will, especially when the decisions are small. This is the rule that removes fear. Small decisions do not need to be correct. They only need to be executed. You are not deciding your life's direction. You are deciding the next movement. The cost of acting is low. The cost of hesitation is high. When decisions are small, speed matters more than accuracy. Execution builds clarity. Hesitation destroys it. Every time you issue a command and follow it, something important happens. The brain updates its internal model. This person's orders are reliable. That update does not require success. It does not require progress. It only requires obedience. You give an order, you follow it. Trust grows, slowly at first, then faster. This is how self-trust actually returns. Not through achievement, through alignment. Identity is not built from big moments. It is built from repeated small acts that confirm who is in charge. Each command executed is a vote for a new identity. Not someone who negotiates, someone who acts. You do not become trustworthy by doing impressive things. You become trustworthy by doing what you say, immediately. Even when what you say is trivial, there is a cost to not commanding yourself, and it is higher than most people realize. Power does not disappear when unused. It is transferred. If you do not issue commands, the brain will, and the brain's commands are predictable. Rest first, comfort first, delay first. These commands are not malicious. They are default. But default control leads to default outcomes. There is no neutral state. Either you lead or you are led. This is the truth that changes behavior permanently. There is no power vacuum inside you. If you do not take command, something else will. And that something does not care about your goals. It cares about immediate relief. Understanding this removes hesitation. Commanding yourself is not aggression. It is responsibility. You do not need a dramatic declaration to enter command mode. No speeches, no vows, no emotional surge. Command mode begins the moment you issue a single order and follow it. Right now, one order. Simple, physical. Stand up, or open the laptop, or move your body. Do not prepare. Do not count down. Do not negotiate. Execute. The purpose is not productivity. The purpose is sensation, to feel what it is like when an order is given and obeyed. That feeling is subtle, but it is real. It is the sensation of internal authority. Once you feel it, you recognize the difference immediately. There is no debate, No drag, just movement. From this point on, the rule is simple. When there is something to do, you do not ask, you command. Questions create delays. Commands create motion. You do not need to be harsh. You need to be clear. You do not need to be motivated. You need to be decisive. This chapter closes a loop that began earlier. You have a reflex. You have rebuilt trust. You know how not to sabotage the system. Now you install the final layer authority, with authority. Thinking shortens, action speeds up, and life begins to feel different, quieter, cleaner, more direct. You are no longer someone who wonders what to do next. You are someone who issues orders and follows them. And that is the difference between a negotiator and a commander. Chapter 10. When you fall. Falling is not a possibility. It is a certainty. Anyone who actually does the work knows this. No one maintains 100% consistency. No system runs smoothly forever. Days get missed. Routines break. Energy drops. Life interferes. If you are doing something real, you will fall. You will slip. You will have moments where you do nothing even though you know better. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the price of operating it. The real problem is never the fall itself. The real problem is what happens immediately after. Most people are not destroyed by the fall. They are destroyed by their reaction to it. They turn a single miss into a story about who they are, a story about what always happens, a story about how this proves something unpleasant and permanent. That story is what breaks the system, not the fall. A fall is an event, nothing more. It has a timestamp. It happens once. Failure is something else entirely. Failure is staying on the ground. Failure is deciding that the fall means something about your identity. The moment you say, "This is just who I am," you are no longer dealing with an action. You are attacking the structure itself. Systems do not collapse because of missed days. They collapse because of wrong conclusions. There is a specific moment after a fall that matters more than any other. It is not the moment you realize you slipped. It is the moment right after. When the brain begins to speak, it says things quietly. Whatever. See? You're back to how you were. There's no point now. These thoughts feel automatic. They feel obvious. They feel true. And this is where most systems die, not in the fall, but in the interpretation of it. The story you tell yourself in that moment determines whether the system survives or not. That is why you cannot allow improvisation here. After a fall, the brain cannot be trusted to think. Thinking leads to narratives. Narratives lead to identity damage. So the response must be scripted, simple, mechanical, non-negotiable. The script has 3 steps, and only 3. First, stop evaluating yourself. No judgment, no self-talk, no analysis. Second, return to the smallest possible action connected to the system. Not the ideal action, not the catch-up action, the smallest one. Third, execute it immediately. That is the entire recovery process. No reflection, no lesson extraction, no long review. Those things can happen later, if needed. But not now, right after a fall. You do not need insight, Bone. You need movement. And it must be small. Very small. The mistake people make is trying to compensate. They fall, then attempt to make up for it. They double the effort. They work longer. They push harder. This is punishment disguised as discipline, and it leads directly to exhaustion. The opposite mistake is just as damaging. Self-pity. I'll take a few days off. I'm clearly not built for this. I need to reset. This feels gentle, but it is abandonment. It hands control back to the old pattern. Both punishment and pity break systems. One through force, the other through avoidance. Discipline does not require either. It requires consistency of return. The smallest action matters because it keeps the system intact. It signals continuity. It says, we are still operating. Trust is not built by never falling. It is built by returning quickly. Each fast return repairs a little of the internal damage. Each delayed return makes the next one harder. You do not need long streaks. You need short gaps. That is the difference. Reliable people are not those who never miss. They are those who come back without drama. No announcements, no apologies, no self-flagellation. They fall. Then they re-enter. Over time. This becomes identity. This is someone who always returns. That identity is far stronger than perfection after a fall. The wrong questions appear automatically. Why did this happen? What's wrong with me? Should I even keep going? These questions feel productive, but they are poison in that moment. They pull attention away from action and into self-concept. The only question that matters after a fall is this: what is the next smallest step? Not the best step, not the right step. The next one. That question keeps the system alive. You do not fix a system by explaining it. You fix it by re-entering it. The body moves first, the mind catches up later. Every time you follow the script, you reinforce a critical lesson: falling is temporary. Quitting is optional. That lesson accumulates. Slowly at first, then reliably. This chapter exists to remove panic from failure, to remove drama from inconsistency, to make falling boring. When falling becomes boring, it loses its power. It stops being a turning point and becomes a speed bump, something you pass over and continue. Right now, think of the most recent time you slipped. Do not judge it. Do not explain it. Just identify it. Then ask one question. If I could redo that moment, what would the smallest possible action be? That answer is your script, not for the past, but for the future. The next time you fall, you will not need to think. You will already know what to do. Falling does not define you. Everyone falls. What defines you is how quickly you return. That speed is the difference between a system that survives and one that collapses. Chapter 11. From a procrastinator to a reliable person. If you are honest, the biggest change may not feel dramatic. There was no explosion, no sudden transformation, no moment where you woke up as a different person. And yet, you are not standing where you used to be. Before this, you knew what to do and still didn't do it. You made promises and forgot them. You heard your own voice and didn't take it seriously. That quiet self-contempt became normal. It shaped how you moved through your days. Compare that to now. You negotiate less. You hesitate less. You speak less and act sooner. Not perfectly, not consistently, but differently. This is not a personality shift. It is a behavioral one. You did not become someone else. You simply stopped betraying yourself as often. That is the change most people miss because it does not announce itself. But it is real. This matters because the goal was never to turn you into a motivated person. Motivation fades. It was never to turn you into someone who forces discipline through grit. Grit breaks. The goal was always simpler and harder at the same time to become someone whose words mean something to themselves, a reliable person. Most people misunderstand what reliability actually is. They imagine someone who never slips, someone who never misses a day, someone who executes at 100%. That image is not just unrealistic, it is harmful. Reliability is not perfection. Reliability is return. A reliable person falls and comes back. A reliable person keeps small promises. A reliable person does not disappear after a mistake. Self-respect is not built from grand achievements. It is built from small actions. Repeated often enough that the brain starts to trust the pattern. Identity does not come from thought. It never has. You do not become more confident by thinking confident thoughts. You do not become reliable by believing you are reliable. The brain does not listen to your explanations. It watches your behavior. Over time, it draws conclusions. You trust yourself because you issue commands and follow them, again and again. That is it. No affirmation can replace that. No insight can shortcut it. This is why thinking your way into change never worked. You were trying to convince a system that only responds to evidence. Behavior is the evidence. Repetition is the proof. Every day, you become the person you demonstrate yourself to be, not the person you describe, not the person you intend, the person you enact. Once this is understood, the future becomes very simple. Not easy. Simple. You do not need to reread this book. You do not need new tools. You do not need more knowledge. The loop is already complete. A task appears. You do not negotiate. You take a small action. If you fall, you return using the script. Then you continue. That loop is enough. If you find yourself thinking you need something more, pause. That thought is the old waiting pattern trying to return. The system does not require upgrades. It requires consistency. This is also why this book cannot become a crutch. Books do not save people. Systems do not save people. You save yourself by using what you have already built. If you come back here looking for motivation, you weaken the very thing you just established. The point of this book was never to be revisited. It exists so you do not need it anymore. There is no promise at the end of this process, no guarantee of success, no assurance that life will become easier. That would be dishonest. What is true is this: you now have a mechanism that prevents you from running away. You know how to begin without feeling ready. You know how to act without permission. You know how to recover without drama. That is enough to change a life, not because it feels powerful, but because it is durable. Life does not change because you understand something. It changes because you stop breaking your own trust. Quietly, repeatedly, without ceremony. So this is how the book ends. No rallying cry, no emotional crescendo, just a calm lock. You do not need to become stronger. You do not need to become better. You only need to continue being someone who keeps their word. Before you close this, do one thing. Choose one very small action you will do today. Do not write it down. Do not make a plan. Do not expand it. Just do it and finish it. Let the book end with behavior, not feeling. A reliable person does not need motivation. They do not need reminders. They do not need promises about the future. They live by a simple rule: say less, do what you say, and return when you fall. That is the identity you have locked in.